kind of rocking 3 potatoes here, so that's.
Yeah, but
it's
you're
a different
always clear
sort.
on the recording. On the recording, it picks you up beautifully, and me, it's just like I'm like this.
It's because
Little
I'm a
weak
loud
ghost in the
honking.
background.
Oh, no.
Just little, oh, and then they did this. So yes,
Oh.
I wish it was better. Hi, Cara, how are you?
Hi, Vicky. I'm doing great, thank you. Looking forward to the
Fabulous.
bank holiday weekend. Woo. How
Whoops.
was the spa?
Oh my God, it was amazing. Although I messed up really badly with the lady. Apparently I was gifted because it was a gift spa weekend. Very grateful. I was gifted a drift away massage. And she said, this is a light to medium massage. And she said that like about 10 minutes in. And I was like, oh, don't be afraid to go like any heavier. Like, I can handle it. I like it quite firm. And then she was like, well, it costs more to have it like heavy. We call that a workout massage. And I was like, right, okay. And I was like, well, we kind of ended the conversation, and I wasn't really understanding if I had committed to the workout massage. I wasn't quite sure what was happening. Anyway, then she went so heavy, like too heavy.
Oh,
And then
like
I couldn't
passive
back out.
aggressively.
Maybe. But then I couldn't back out. So it's one of the most rough massages. But oh my God, it was needed. Like the knots she was finding were very, very heavy.
Wow. So you were getting your money's worth. She was
I
like,
definitely got my money's worth. She was amazing. It was just the awkwardness of asking for more, then instantly regretting it. I was like, yeah, I can handle it. No, I can't. No, I
a
can't.
story of so many of my bad decisions.
Wild
Oh,
assumptions.
never heard this like sliding scale of pricing based on
It
depth
was
of
brand new
tissue
information to me.
massage.
Why ask?
I'll
Why
be on the
ask if that
lookout.
pressure is all right for me? And I say no, and then they say to change pressure, it will cost X, Y, and Z. It's very
Upsell,
Ryanair
baby.
approach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if we're just going to like lightly poke you, and if
Yes,
you
like
actually
brush
want
you.
to benefit,
Yeah.
well, if you want to benefit from the massage, you have to give us more money.
Honest. Would you, Cara, and She Changed History listeners like to learn a fabulous story?
I absolutely would, and I'm going to speak for them and say they would too.
Hopefully that's why they're here. I've got a lovely story for you today. It's new territory,
Oh.
so bear with me. 1907, the Qing Dynasty's grip, it tightens like a silken noose around a nation's throat. Revolution simmers in the shadows, and they are coming for her. Qiu Jin, a poet, rebel, a woman who dared to unbind not only her feet, but the very chains of her traditions. They knew her defiance, they knew her spirit, they knew where to find her. Escape was possible, flight was an option, but she would not yield. This is the story of a woman who chose to face the storm, to stand her ground, to become a legend in the face of inevitable doom. This is the story of Qiu Jin's defiant stand.
Wow, how exciting is that?
It's a drama one. I love a bit of drama.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're going to Japan today. So sources today are New York Times, not Japan, amazingwomeninhistory.com, rebelgirls.com, which I've used a couple of times. They're really good. And the British Museum, they had an exhibition on China's hidden century, and Qiu Jin was featured there. So Qiu Jin was born into a fairly respected, but their fortunes were dwindling kind of family in the southern port of Xiamen on the 8th of November 1875. That's disputed, but we'll say that today. Her father, Qiu Xinon, was a government official, and her mother, who had the surname Shon, also came from a family of like distinguished literature kind of family. Her name, the name Chu in Japanese, actually means autumn, which is really sweet. I really like
That's
that.
lovely.
Yeah. She wasn't an only child. She had an older brother and a younger sister, so she was middle child. And her childhood was very comfortable. There wasn't really much to complain about. She really was into poetry. She studied martial heroes like Mulan, as in the Mulan, and she fantasized one day about seeing her own name in the history books. However, like all Chinese girls around that time and up to very, very, very recent history, she was expected to bind her feet. We can go into that a little bit.
I think it would be interesting to go into it. Yeah, it's something I'm familiar with from a couple of books that I've read.
Yes. Be
It
prepared
bears
to get
discussing.
shivers down your spine. It's just really
Yeah.
hard to picture. It's a beauty status thing. So the length of your feet and the femininity of your feet meant you were more attractive or desirable or had a higher status, basically. And what people would do is they would wrap their feet ever so tightly in bandages, so bind them in, not bandages, but like cloth, to change the shape of their feet. And the shape of the feet was to emit the shape of a lotus flower. So that's where that comes from. And it was only girls who were expected to do this, boys were not. And you bound your feet so tightly, it would change the bone structure and the shape of your feet and how you walked and all those kind of things. It became outlawed, but the last factory only shut in the 1990s. So it was outlawed a lot before that, but it was still, it had like an underlying cultural phenomenon. And it was only in the 1990s. So what's that, 35 years ago?
When you say factory, are we talking about the place where the binding materials were
Yeah,
made, or oh my God, so up until the 90s.
it's
This
terrifying.
these
Yeah.
entrenched things though, like
Yeah.
if you have a child and you want them to have marriage prospects, then you are faced with a really stark decision about going along with something or not. And thank
Yeah.
God it's no longer a
Yeah.
possibility legally,
And
because
the
that's
pain of those
so
girls, all those girls
disabling.
went through. Yeah, blood and yeah, horrid, horrid, horrid,
Broken
horrid.
bones and yeah,
Hmm.
really terrible.
Yeah. So Chu did have that, but again, apparently that was nothing compared to her parents wanting her to have an arranged marriage. Which we've spoken about a few times in a few different stories. She wasn't very happy about that at all. This was when she was 19, so relatively quite old compared to some of our betrothed that we've covered about before. Chu's father chose her a man called Wang Tingyun, who was the son of a wealthy merchant in the Hunan province. So classic, they've got money. I want a dowry, sorted. This was,
Yeah.
this is my job as dad. I'm going to do this. So she did get married to him, but it was a very unhappy time for Chu. She reflects on this a lot in her poetry. And we've got a little example here.
She wrote of her husband, "That person's behavior is worse than an animal's. He treats me as less than nothing. When I think of him, my hair bristles with anger. It's absolutely unbearable."
Yeah, so we're not talking Prince
Not,
Charming here. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
If your friend said that to you about their spouse, you'd be like, oh,
yeah. Red
okay,
flag,
it's
red
time to
flag.
go, time to get
Mm.
out.
And as we previously mentioned, she was really into poetry, and that was her dream, and she fantasized and idolized these really big figures in history like Milan. Her husband kind of like not knocked that out of her. I don't know if physically, you can deduce from those quotes that maybe there was physical, but I don't know. And basically, he shook her self confidence so much that she kind of abandoned that idea. Like her self doubt was so great, she was like, I could never be a poet, and
Oh,
that was it for her. So this period of her life, understandably, is a bit lonely and a bit scary and a bit dark, and it's just it's a sad for a girl so young as well. That's so sad, isn't
it
it?
really is. And it's such a needless thing. You can't help but leap to conclusions about him being threatened by her capabilities or whatever it may be. That's terribly sad.
She did keep writing in private, and a lot of her writing actually covered current events of what was going on in China at the minute, including the Boxer Rebellion. Have you heard of the Boxer Rebellion?
No, I don't know anything about that.
Hmm. Okay, let's go into some of the little history. So basically, the Boxers were like an uprising subculture that was initiated by the Chinese secret society. The group was known to practice a form of martial arts that resembled boxing, um, particularly to the westernized. So the term boxer is quite a Western label because boxing is something we know.
I'm just utterly charmed that I thought Boxer Rebel, it'll be from some province called the Box province or something, really abstract. And literally, it's like they're fighting.
Yeah.
It's just about whacking people.
So the Boxers embarked on a armed campaign to drive all the foreigners out of China. So quite strong. So they were uprising, and then a military coalition of 8 different nations defeated them. So they came into China in the 1900s, and quite easily it's noted that they defeated the Boxers and the Qing forces. So those 8 nations that worked together. So imagine this in a 2025 context. Those
Nope, can't
nations
be done.
included those nations were Japan, Russia, Britain, France, Italy, Austria-Hungary, and the United States. So they came together and they defeated the Boxers. Uprising.
I'm going to have to read some more about this because I'm
Hmm.
thinking, what's it got to do with you lot? Like, why have you come rolling into a sovereign territory to quash an uprising? So yeah, there's got to be more to dig into there. That's really
Yeah, I
interesting.
think so. And I think because the Boxers were there and their campaign was to drive all foreigners out. And then a foreign coalition, if you like, came in and actually stood
Oh, I
united
see.
against us. Isn't that interesting?
Well, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for explaining that. Because, yes, of course, they would all unify to go, guys, we're getting turfed out and we have business dealings here. We have, whatever interests here. Let's band together and stop them from kicking us out. Ah,
I
yeah,
think
there you go.
so.
No research
Yeah.
required.
Yeah,
That
we'll
explains it.
see. So Q used her poetry to express her concerns about where China was heading. Obviously, this is quite a scary movement. And she kind of pulled on particularly heroines of the past in her writing, which was really nice. And her concerns were particularly of China and Chinese women. In 1903, Qiu actually moved with her husband and 2 children to Beijing because her husband got a job there. So she writes a poem on this, and we have an excerpt here, which is called A River of Crimson, A Brief Stay in a Glorious Capital. Do you fancy reading that out for us, Cara?
Yeah, you bet. War songs from all 4 directions falter as I finally break through the siege of encircling foes. The aftertaste of these past 8 years makes me long wistfully for Xie Shisheng. Bitterly forced to behave as a wife with painted brows, I'm full of disdain.
Yes, so we could go into an English literature lesson and decipher that line by line. And what do they say? Read between the lines. What is the context? What are they pulling on here? But it is kind of on the paper that, you know, they're going through this hard marriage. She's just doing this with her husband. She's not sure about it. Why do I have to uproot my life for you? Kind of vibe. But actually, her life in the capital, it was kind of more exciting than her life where they were. She managed to find friendships with like-minded women, which we know is
Ah,
so important for your well-being.
yes,
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 yes, yes,
please.
yes.
Yes to that.
And she began to take an even more interest in China's political affairs. It was at this point in her life she unbound her feet. She drank lots of wine and she began experimenting with cross-dressing and sword play. By cross-dressing, we mean she put some trousers on. It's really
Uh,
not that dramatic, but like, okay. Um, but swordplay was quite a big deal because that is a skill. And we know from the Ella Hatton episode how difficult that skill is and how much dedication you need around that. So she kind of is coming out of her shell a little bit in Beijing. She also develops her feminist streak there and these ideas of revolution that she wants to get involved with. And all that came from was from connecting with people who were already thinking like that and already had the opportunity to exercise that. I think she had, in my head, she's got this little wick of a candle that's always wanted to be lit and ignited. And then this situation let her light that fire.
That's at the support of like-minded friends will do that for you, won't it? You just, if she's felt quashed and stifled by her husband not understanding her, or worse, to have people around her who say, yeah, pick up that sword, babe, put those trousers on, let's go drink some wine. That's what you need.
Sounds a great night out. I'm so ready for that night out.
I'm in. I'm all in.
So now she's kind of like got these weird two identities. Not weird. She's got these two conflicting identities going on. She's got the cross-dressing, revolutionary, independent lady, but also she's still married with 2 children in a world where women are expected to stay at home and be subservient to men, and that is their role in society. As you can imagine, this probably wasn't helping her marriage. Based on the quote we read out earlier, how her husband felt, I don't think he was fully on board. I think as well, these ideas and this little fire that she started actually made her dislike her husband even more. She kind of started to look down on him because that he was uncultured. So their marriage is still not great. It's still difficult. But the difference is now is that Qiu's got confidence and she's got a bit of fire and she's got a bit of a glimpse into a world where she doesn't need that man, because the only reason she's got that man is through her dad anyway, right? So eventually in the summer of 1904, Qiu at this point is 28, so she's given it a good 9 years. She takes the bold decision and she decides to leave her husband. She decides that she can't be trapped in this unhappy marriage any longer. She actually sells her jewelry to get some finance behind her, and she uses that money to travel to Japan to study, leaving her husband and children behind. This actually in later history earns her the name as Chyna's Nora, which is a little reference to Henrik Ibsen's play A Doll's House. Again, she wrote a little poem about this called Regrets, lines written en route to Japan. So this is what actually she wrote at that key moment in her life. Do you fancy reading a poem?
Certainly. Unbinding my feet, I clean out 1,000 years of poison. With heated heart, arouse all women's spirits. Alas, this delicate kerchief here is half stained with blood and half with tears.
Oh. I know. She's a very good poet. That's what I read from that. She's very good at this. So you can see in there, she's really grappling with those two identities that we picked up before. She's got this, she is a mother, but she also knows that she is carrying the burden of 1,000 years, which is pretty powerful imagery, I think we would say, really in our English lit class. My English lit teacher was Miss Halifax, and I think she'd have liked that very much. So
shout out to Miss Halifax.
Miss Halifax. So when she arrives in Tokyo, she enrolls at a women's practical school there, and she shortens her name, so she kind of loses her even more identity to her husband, to Qiu Jin. And she does attend school, but she does still focus a lot of her time outside of the classroom. So because China is still in distress, the Qing government was on its last legs. There's a lot of external pressures from foreign powers about the state of China, and it's a real period of uncertainty. So kind of echoes of that Boxer movement, but even more so. But with times of uncertainty come opportunities, and those opportunities are sometimes for the minorities, if you like. So you often see in periods of history that people rise up who wouldn't normally want rise up, and by people I mean people who aren't men. who aren't straight men. Qiu found herself at the forefront of an emerging wave of new feminists who believed that women's rights and political revolution naturally went hand in hand. She joined a rebel group who were very influential, and they were called Anti-Manchu. So basically, the Manchus were very racist, and they would strip the Han people, who are, like earlier we said, Han Mulan, of their cultures and traditions, and, you know, really was stripping out society. So she joined this group, Anti-Manchu, who were against them, which makes sense, anti. And it was a secret society. And it was part of the Revolutionary Alliance. Qiu argued that it wasn't enough for women just to sit around and ask for equality. She wanted to be on the front line, which kind of pulls in that sword action we were talking about earlier. She was prepping. She knew, she was ready. She always wanted to fight like that, just like Mulan. She was riled up. She was ready. She was like looking for a war, if you like. She knew it was an opportunity. And this all happened in Japan, and I think Japan in her life was such a freeing time for her, because she kind of dabbled into, she's kind of figured out a little bit about, this is who I am, this is my identity. And then in Japan she let rips, like her confidence is up, she's got peers, she's got a whole clear clarity on what her identity is. She is ready for action. She wants that action now. And she really liked the way that Japan, in particular, their military spirit, how disciplined they were, and how important the military were in the role in modernizing Japan. So she was like pulling all this Japanese influence and wanting to take it with her.
I am getting from what you're saying that she's not afraid of danger. She's, you know,
Doesn't sound
joining
like
these
it, does
secret
it?
societies.
Yeah, a little
She's
rebel.
up for a little, up for a little rebel action. And that she's an extremely militaristic person, that she's a warrior mindset,
I
a
love
fighter's
it.
mindset, a soldier's mindset. So
Yeah.
that is
I'm a
incredible.
fighter
And
with words. I can't, I don't think I identify with that part personally. I've got really
I'm
bad hand-eye coordination.
so sword play, maybe not
I would like
not
to
your
give it a
thing.
go. Me and Jamie went clay pigeon shooting once in rural Ireland with a guy called Seamus, and he was teaching us how to clay pigeon shoot, and he got mad at me because I would always miss it by like a millimeter. And he was like, I don't understand. Like, what's wrong with you?
Well, guess what, Seamus? We're not all put on this earth to shoot clay pigeons.
Yeah. And
You
he was
know,
like, you're
the
doing exactly
revolution.
what I'm doing, but you're doing it wrong. Okay, well, fine,
Wow.
thank you.
The revolution needs tacticians as well as swordswomen and
It needs
clay
that
pigeon
person,
shooters. So
yeah,
come on,
who could
you
do
know,
the
we all have
admin,
our
make
part.
sure all the invoices are paid for. I can definitely help with that. Yeah, for sure.
I'm thinking like planning uprising, but if you're more feeling the admin, that's cool.
I
That's
don't
cool.
know. Like, I feel like, I don't know, could I plan an uprising? I probably could, given,
Yeah.
yeah, I probably could.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is kind of the action that she wants, right? She wants to topple the King government. She wants to live in a republic land. She is, like you said, just ready. She's ready for this revolution. She joined the Triads, who were also another underground society wanting to topple this government. And when she joined that, she actually returned back to China in 1906. 5 or 6, depending on who we're listening to. And the idea was to advance women's causes and topple the King government. She, quite like I would, started a journal about it and did like a little newspaper called
Login.
with words, the Chinese Women's Journals, which was basically like a feminist magazine, a bit like Victoria Woodall in that episode. She started that paper, didn't she, when she was on the Stock Exchange? Caroline Norton wrote all those pamphlets to change and gain momentum.
And they're kind of contemporaries, aren't they?
What year are we in now? I guess like 1900, so quite a similar time, not too far. Yeah, not too far.
It's sort of
Victoria
a global trend going on.
Yes, love this. And we already know from our very good English lit classes that she's a poet and she's a good poet. She was very good at bringing difficult topics to a broader audience. So topics even like the foot binding that we just spoke about, like the arranged marriages. This was a feminist magazine, so it wasn't too radical, but for society as a whole, very radical. So she also brought up the ideas in this magazine that women's place aren't just as mothers, but they could be more than that. She felt particularly that the traditional family setup was very oppressive to women. She published an essay titled A Respectful Proclamation to China's 200 million women comrades. And in that, she basically gave like a rousing call to her women to like strip themselves of these shackles. It was very much like, come and join the party, like uprise with me together. There's a little quote from that essay, which I absolutely love, if you're happy to read that.
Right, to do it justice. Right.
You think rebel, think
I know I don't
think
do
warrior.
dramatic readings, but here we go. I'm going to try. I'm going to try to channel the energy. With all my heart, I beseech and beg my 200 million female compatriots to assume their responsibility as citizens. Arise, arise, Chinese women, arise.
Yes, love this. It's like when we sing Les Mis in choir.
There's a,
Yes.
there's a, the blood
The people
kind
sing.
of froths up, doesn't it? Yeah.
Casually on the side, while she was doing in all these secret societies and she was doing all this action, she casually learned how to make bombs on the side.
Oh,
She was so ready for this fight.
Getting hands-on, like proper
Yes.
hands-on.
Yeah, so she's definitely both of those things. She's definitely the writing and the persuasive and the influencer on the paper, but she's also very practical. Then in 1907, Qiu was running a school which was set up by her friend and also her cousin, Zhiling, that was meant to be ideally for young women wanting to become sports teachers. That was the idea of the school. But actually, just like your local vape shop vibe, it was a front for allegedly.
Right. So she's doing the 1907 version of a vape shop front in this school is not
like, that's
actually
just
teaching
fraudulent.
sports teachers.
100%.
This
Actually,
school is not.
maybe it was. Maybe it did it between the hours of 10 and 2 on a weekday, but actually around that, it was actually basically training up young revolutionaries. So it was like a recruitment, right, for people ready for the revolution.
I'm having visions now of them being like, okay, guys, somebody's coming, tuck all the bomb making equipment away and get out those like climbing
I reckon that's what happened.
And we'll do
here's
some
a rope.
chin-ups.
Climb that rope.
Yeah. Plain clothes, if you think about it, like going to be in
very similar
in your comfies, ready to rock. Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll be out of breath as well from putting all the bomb equipment away. So they'll be like, oh, they're definitely doing the bleep test or whatever they're doing. So yeah.
Good friend. Good choice.
In the final years of her life, which kind of shows where this may end, she was frequently known for cross-dressing. So there's a picture there of her being in very, very masculine wear. She's got like a flat cap situation going on. She's got a stick or a sword. It's probably a sword, isn't it? Very masculine, black tailored suit. And she quite liked Western style of clothing. So it's very what you would imagine an early 1900s man. A little bit like the James Barry outfit we looked at. A little bit like
very like that. And if I just kind of was to look at it from the shoulders down, I'm seeing Charlie Chaplin, although that could be because of the stick. And which, as you said, is probably actually a sword.
A sword, I imagine. I can't see her with a stick. She wants a weapon. She wants...
Yeah.
She's continuously practices military drills and she trains with her students. She became very well known as being quite chivalrous as well, like giving back to society. She was known very often to help the poor and the weak. She, like we said, learned martial arts. She was known for her knife wielding. That's what she was very good at. She was very active and into that. She was a little like in my head like a little Rottweiler. Like she's ready. She's been pent up in this cage for so long, and she's like so excited to get going. On July the 6th, 1907, her cousin, who set up the school, was caught and tortured for information before an uprising they had scheduled, Qi province, and the cousin was actually executed the next day. This just shows how on the front line they were. And because they were a secret organization, that's why the torturing was there, to like grab as much information as they could. Because we're in the early 1900s, Qiu didn't find out for a few days. And this takes us to the defining moment of her life, which we spoke about right at the introduction. So, you know, if we just do a quick blah, 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 like flashing montage of what she's been up against to get here and what her choices are to get to this point, she has defied expectations at every turn. She has left her husband and her children in a different country. She's pushed both physically, mentally, different barriers, intellectually. She's really put so many foundations down for this revolution that she wants to happen, and this push of society forward in her eyes to be a lot more like Japan that she's experienced, and a lot more Western, and also she's fighting not just for herself, but over, 200 million women as well. Like, she has gone hard throughout her life. And it all comes down to this one moment where she is warned the same people who captured her cousin are coming for her because they think that he has a co-conspirator and they think it's a woman.
You don't have to be Columbo to put together the fact, okay, this guy's cousin was his co-teacher at a school where allegedly sports teachers, PE teachers are being trained,
Yes.
and yet we don't seem to have any more PE teachers. Or she knows the writing's on the wall. She's in real, serious, lethal trouble.
Yep. And she decides to stay. She decides to stay at the school. Yeah. She's very aware of this decision. She knows what that'll probably mean. And she refuses to run. It's a scene that history has been different kind of embellishments and legends and things are stretched from it. But the crux of it is if she's going to be captured, she's going to be tortured, much like her cousin was. She does attempt to fight back, but she is quite quickly captured by these forces. And we know what happens then. She is treated the same. She gets tortured. But she refuses to crack, which again, all of these last little bits of her life define her character so strongly. Mm-hmm. And she was too executed. So it's exactly the same fate as her cousin had had. The difference was she was beheaded in public.
Oh my God.
Because they wanted to make an example of her. They wanted to use her as a cautionary tale. So she was beheaded on July the 15th, 1907 in her home village as well, where her parents and, family probably still were. And at this point, she's 31.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a lot she has packed into her life. I mean.
Yeah. And she was determined to die for a cause, and determined that her life meant something towards that cause. Brutally executing a woman in public did not go down well. The public were outraged, shocked at the brutality. Many Chinese were actually strengthened in their resentment of the Qing dynasty because of this beheading, because of this choice that they made. So actually she did drum up that support with her sacrifice, which is like the irony of the whole thing. And she immediately became a national hero because of, I guess, weirdly, because of her old identity, because of her previous identity of being a woman, of being weak, feeble. Why would you possibly do this? But actually, maybe it was what caused the outrage. I don't know. And because she became a national hero, she's very well loved in Chinese culture. She's been the subject of poetry, of dramas, different types of works of fictions. Lots of her writing was saved, including poetry, letters to family and friends, and they were actually published after her death because people wanted to share as much of her as they could, which is kind of like a really lovely thing. It's so bittersweet, isn't it? Because that's what she deserved as that fighter and that revolutionist. I find it absolutely fascinating. Obviously, decision for her to stay in that school hall attracted many critics, many of them accusing her of being naive. Not just that decision being naive, but that whole idea of overthrowing the king and overthrowing the rules, Chinese social and political ideologies. It's just so, oh, don't be silly, that's never going to happen. So both her decision to stay was criticised and her core belief was criticised. Others have said that her death is completely unnecessarily, and because she had ample time, she had plenty of warning to run away. But she, in terms of history, the Qing Empire was overthrown in 1911, so very, very soon after.
Oh,
and the last emperor abdicated in 1912. So she did get what she wanted, and arguably, maybe her death did contribute to that.
I think, yeah, she wanted her death to mean something. And it might not be the decision that you would make or that you would want someone to make who you loved, but absolutely based on the results, you have to say that she made a decision, and that decision played out the way that she wished that it would.
Yeah, absolutely. More than a century after her death, many Chinese still visit her tomb beside Westlake in Hangzhou to pay their respects to the woman now embedded in the national consciousness as a bold feminist heroine. She is a hero around the world today, and she represents strength and she represents purpose. She lived up to basically all that drama in her poems and all that really strong, resonant wording. And one of the lines I want to finish on was, "Don't tell me women are not the stuff of heroes." And I think that embeds her beautifully. And I think she was, in her own way, very much a hero and absolutely integral to both Japanese and Chinese history.
That is an incredible story. I mean, from one end of the spectrum of standing and facing what you know is going to be your death to support your principles, but living that way, right down to leaving your family and changing your own personal life to something that no one would recognize as a possibility for you. That's a remarkable, brave, stubborn person. That's incredible. Thank you very much for bringing that to the table, because this is all so interesting and new. Thank you very much, Vicki.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of She Changed History. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Find us on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you've got any ideas of women you'd like us to cover in a future episode, please comment on the socials or email us at shechangedhistory@gmail.com. Catch you next time.